Welcome to the Creative Crafters podcast. I have a very special guest today. Her name is Butler. Chris has helped thousands of crafters learn how to use their Cricut machine and create designs without feeling overwhelmed. For fun, Chris enjoys designing SVG files, hanging out with her family, preferably at the lake, traveling, and volunteering at her church. She is a wife and a mom of two crazy fun kids. Oh, that sounds so interesting. So welcome, Chris. I'm so excited to have you here.
Thanks so much, Bette. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited for the summit coming up. We're just going to have lots of fun crafting.
For sure. So I want my listeners to be able to get to know you a lot better and maybe connect with you in some way. So let's tell them all about who you are, sort of about your company, and how did it get started?
Okay, well, my name is Chris, as you said. I am a mom to two kids. I homeschool them. I have one that has graduated. She still lives at home, but is in the workforce now. And my son is the lovely, wonderful age of 13. So we're getting ready to start high school. That keeps me busy for sure. But back when, I'm not even sure how long I've been doing this, maybe 8 years, I started my blog, Daily Dose of DIY, and we teach people how to use their Cricut craft machine, and we make all sorts of fun Cricut crafts. As an extension of that, I also started a YouTube channel, so you can see all the craft making happen and get a good idea of how it's made. And we also added on a subscription box 2 years ago where I send you all the craft blanks and materials you need to make a fun Cricut project every month. And then that also comes with loads of SVG files and video tutorials so you know how to make it. As far as getting this started, I always knew that, like, since I was a teenager, I think I had my life plan, and that involved getting married at 25 and having my first kid at 28 and my second kid by 33. And I also said I would start a business in my 40s. So somewhere after my son was born, he was my second, I realized my life to that point had gone to plan. Like, everything happened as I said it would happen when I was a teenager. So I started thinking, well, what business am I going to start then in my 40s? That's what's next. And we hit my 40th birthday, and I was like, okay, God, what business am I going to do? And then I hit 41 and I still didn't quite know what I wanted to do. Through my late 30s, I worked for a coupon blogger. I didn't even know the term virtual assistant or VA at that time. I followed her blog for coupon deals, and she was hiring, and I applied and I got that job. So that allowed me to stay home. But back in those days of blogging, nobody was really talking about how to do it. It seemed like everybody that was doing it, husband was a techie person and built their websites. Nobody talked about how much money they made. It was all like a great big mystery. So I just thought, this allows me to stay home and homeschool my kids and make a little side income. But that one day in my, I think it was said I was 41, in my early 40s, then it popped in my mind. It's like, I wonder if bloggers are talking about how much they make or how to do it yet. So I Googled it and I landed on, I'm sure you're familiar with Rosemary and the Busy Budgeter. I landed on her site and one of her income reports, and I'd picked my jaw up off the floor and bought a domain right away. And I knew then that was going to be my business. It was going to be craft and DIY. And so I started building out my website.
Wow, that's it's one of the things, trying to make a decision for what you're going to do. I know I had my career planned out just like you, and when it was at the point you want to make a change, then trying to figure it out is really tough. So you've really hit the nail on the head. You're just amazing. So what's important to you about what you're doing right now?
What's most important to me is I get to make a difference. Like, and I'm sure you've noticed this too, but when people want to create something, whether it's the difference through teaching people and you get those emails like they just can't figure it out, and I'm able to walk it through, and then they're able to make something that they've always wanted. It's usually a gift or something sentimental to them. It just that is my favorite part, the people I get to meet and help with my Cricut. And then with the money that I make teaching people, I get to make a difference in different charities and do different fun stuff like that.
Yeah, that sounds fabulous. Now, I know you create a lot of different projects. So where do you get your inspiration?
Where do I get my inspiration? Probably the same as most people. I like scroll Pinterest endlessly for hours. And it's like, oh, that looks cute. And then I think, well, what can I do to make it different or make it better? I love walking through Hobby Lobby and just see what's trending, even if it's just like the colors or what different stores are putting out there, and magazines and different blogs, craft shows. I love doing that, especially in the fall. Just see what other people are doing, and then I try to put my own spin on it and think, how could I do that differently?
Yeah, I think doing it differently yet following the trends is great. Now, this probably was a year ago, but you did a cardinal card. I think it was for the last summit you did with us. It was just magnificent. Everybody just loved it. So are you doing a lot of card crafts more than anything else?
I do some. My absolute favorite and what I started my blog on is like woodworking, stenciling, painting. And of course, Cricut has been a great help in that. And in doing those projects, that's where I started getting all the questions of like, well, how do you do this with your Cricut? How do you do this with your Cricut? And at the time, I was fairly new to making SVGs. So stuff like card making and paper crafts just kind of scared me a little bit. SVGs, I'm sure you are aware, it's a whole different ball game to design a paper craft SVG than like maybe a stencil that you're going to make a sign with. But I love a challenge, and I kept working at it and challenging myself to do all sorts of different paper crafts and 3Ds and cards and all of that. And I did fall in love with it. Now they are some of my favorite SVG files to make and projects to make as well.
Yeah, so you were talking about stencils and wood. I'm just sort of fascinated with it. So what kind of material were you cutting on the Cricut to make your stencils? Was it vellum or what was it?
Stencil vinyl is the easiest I find to work with, especially if you're going to do like one-off projects. Now, when you're using stencil vinyl, it is one-off. You can't reuse it, but you can, if you want a reusable stencil, you can use Mylar sheets or laminate sheets and cut reusable stencils out of those.
Oh, Mylar, I hadn't thought about that. I've been stuck on the vellum for so long that, okay, I'm getting my advice from Chris, and that's what's really important.
Yeah.
So what do you find the most challenging aspect of your work?
Most challenging for me is time management, I think. And then a lot of us with creative brains get like shiny objects syndrome or squirrel brain. It's like, oh, a typical crafter, how many unfinished projects do you have? Like I start a work project and I think, oh, I have to do this. And oh, I want to make this and go back and forth. That's the biggest struggle work-wise. Personally, as far as what I do, I think I mentioned just a bit ago that the biggest challenge and struggle was learning how to make those SVGs for paper projects.
Yeah, it's always a learning curve when you're in crafting. So, what software do you use to do your design? I know I use Illustrator almost exclusively, but there's so many other options out there.
Yes, I'm an Adobe Illustrator girl too. I will occasionally use Inkscape. There's a few things you can do over there that maybe I just haven't learned how to do in Illustrator yet. And then I also love making sublimation designs. So for that, I use Procreate on my iPad. So I kind of bounce back and forth between a few, but for SVGs, Illustrator is definitely my favorite.
You mentioned sublimation. Now, I know everybody's really interested in sublimation. So do you have a special printer for it? Do you have any recommendations?
I used my recommendation if you're getting started is definitely to use an Epson Eco Tank because they are a home printer, but their tanks, you can put whatever ink you want in them. They don't come pre-filled. So you can fill those tanks with sublimation ink, and that is a very economical way to get started. Actually, I have 2 of those printers now, and I love them. I think they're great. And to me, it was a smarter move to get those than to buy a printer made for sublimation that was several $100s more.
Yeah, I agree. I have an Epson here I use for my print then cut. So just adding another one in another layer on another stack. It's just we work in small spaces sometimes, and I finally took over almost the rest of my living room with my equipment. So adding another printer. I just love some of the sublimation. You mentioned Procreate, so you're doing a lot of those designs. Now, do you offer those for sale on your site at all?
I have everything on designs like SVG and sublimation on my website is generally free, but I do extra designs for the Cricut Crafters Club, and I sell some extras on Etsy.
That is fabulous. I mean, just what a way to make a living and to have the lifestyle you want is doing exactly what you're doing. So what advice would you have for someone who wants to do what you're doing?
I would tell them to be prepared to be in it for the long haul. I think that's the best advice I got in the beginning. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to start this website or start this YouTube channel or start selling on Etsy, and they burn out in a month or 2 because they didn't give it time to just grow. There's a lot of competition out there, but I don't want that to scare people off because you are unique and you have something different to bring to the table, and you can be successful if you don't give up. Just know it's going to take 3 to 6 months at least to see some traction, and most likely a year or more to start making money at it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you 100%. And career changes, quite a few people go through a career change just as you have to get into something and want that instant gratification. It is definitely not instant, exactly like you said. So what's the best way for our listeners to get a hold of you, to get on your mailing list?
Well, they can reach me if you come to dailydoseofdiy.com. There's all sorts of ways to get on my mailing list. You can also find me on Facebook. That's where I'm most active, at Daily Dose of DIY. And you can also just shoot me an email anytime, and that address is hello@dailydoseofdiy.com.
Well, that's perfect. So they can ask you those SVG questions for sure, because you've gone through the whole gamut of learning how to make them and doing it. So perfect. I just want to thank you for being here, Chris. This has been absolutely amazing. This is the Creative Crafters podcast, and we'll see you on the next episode.